the Earth turns and the seasons change, winter grips the planet. Of all the elements, cold is our deadliest enemy. From ice storms to avalanches, frostbite to heart attacks, cold is a killer.
Climbing.
I'm Donal McIntyre. I'm about to follow winter's relentless advance from its home in the Arctic as it brings some of the most dangerous weather on the planet. I'm about to be buried alive, frozen solid, and plunged into the lethal white heart of winter. This is Wild Weather. My journey with cold starts here, on the very top of the world. The Arctic has claimed hundreds of lives as explorers battled the extreme elements to get here. But I've chosen a quicker way. Amazingly, this beautiful and awesome landscape is the source of all our cold weather in the Northern Hemisphere. I've come here to find out how winter begins.
The Arctic is the area north of 66 degrees latitude. Frozen all the year round, it's an area of harsh scenery and frozen beauty. This is the world's largest ice cube.
The scale of this place is breathtaking. 16 million square kilometers of solid ice. That's bigger than India and China put together. What is strange is that there's very little weather to speak of. I expected blizzards and blinding snowstorms. It's sunny. There's a light breeze and very little snowfall. It's just like a desert, and in fact, it's classed as one, but a desert that's permanently frozen. To find out how this place generates our winter weather, we have to know what keeps it in this state. We think of Earth as a blue planet, but look at it from above and it's white. Frozen solid all year round. That's because the planet is tilted on its axis. During our winter, the Arctic is turned away from the sun. It's always night, and the temperature can plummet as low as -50. Winter shrouds the Northern Hemisphere. As the year passes, the Earth continues its orbit, and the North Pole tilts towards the sun. The seasons change, and summer returns to the north. Up here, the sun shines pretty much 24 hours a day, which is why it's called the land of the midnight sun. But even this is not enough to break cold's grip. In the Arctic, as you can see from my shadow, the angle of the sun is so shallow that its rays simply bounce off the surface, reflecting its energy rather than absorbing it. This keeps the temperature of the surrounding atmosphere constant and helps perpetuate the polar climate. Even at the height of the Arctic summer, temperatures only creep above freezing. But it's still not enough to melt the ice. Which is just as well because I'm not standing on solid rock. A few meters beneath my feet is the Arctic Ocean. And just to prove it, I'm going to take a look. Because this vast layer of ice holds the key to cold's grip on the poles. It's spectacular, a layer of ice up to 10 meters thick, and it's all frozen fresh water. There's about as much salt in it as your own home freezer, because when seawater freezes, it locks out the salt. And it's this vast freshwater ice sheet above me that's the key to winter's energy. It works like this. The ice keeps the air immediately above it at almost the same temperature. Above this layer, warmer air is also sinking down, which forces the colder surface air to slip south. This shimmering air looks just like a heat haze, but is in fact the first wisps of the polar wind. This is what carries winter out of its Arctic lair. This icy blast accelerates the further south it travels. I'm going to follow the polar wind as it brings the wildest, most destructive weather into our world.
This far north, east and west have little or no bearing. From here, all directions point south, which I suppose leaves me, as it does winter, only one way to go.
Even 1,000 miles south of the North Pole, cold still grips the planet. And yet even here, faced with the worst extremes of cold weather, people make their homes. I've come to one of the most northerly inhabited settlements on the planet, Ittiqortoormiit in Greenland. It's home to one of the most hardy peoples on Earth, the Inuit. So if they can survive out here, maybe they're different from me.
Hi, hi.
Great to be here.
Yes, nice to meet you.
The weather here is among the most extreme on the planet. In winter, temperatures can drop to -40. Children can only play outside for 10 minutes before their skin freezes solid. But a lifetime's exposure can prepare you for the worst.
How do you survive out here? You know, I've got 3 pairs of gloves under here and mitts. My fingers are still cold. How can you keep so warm?
When I was young, I also freeze and begin to hunt. I freeze very much, but I learned to use my hands even when they're very cold. It's training.
So the Inuit are no different from me. We are simply not designed for cold because we evolved in the tropics. And even after thousands of years of Arctic weather, the Inuit have remarkably few physical adaptations to the cold. It's only our inventiveness, not evolution, that keeps us alive. Clothing, shelter, heating. Only a madman would challenge the Arctic cold without any kind of protection. So in order to see what it does to me, I've come here to a controlled environment to find out just what happens when the body is exposed to extreme cold.
Not the best place to be in your underwear, is it?
According to cold expert Dr. Frank Golden, most people can only stand this kind of cold for half an hour. I'll be constantly monitored, and unlike the real Arctic, I can walk out of here anytime.
Okay.
Good luck to you, mate.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Cheers.
much. Temperature here is -18. It's bloody freezing. It's not the best place to be without any clothes on, but at least it's getting my temperature down quickly for my body to react.
Our bodies keep our vital organs at a stable 37 degrees Celsius. It's called the core temperature. I'm going to have to work overtime to try and maintain it.
He's not long in the cold now, but you can see he's beginning to shiver a little. Well, he's shivering to try and produce more heat, to try and counter the heat being lost in the environment. Notice the way he keeps his arms and his elbows close to his side and his arms across his chest. He's trying to shut down the surface area through which heat is being lost in the surrounding environment.
only way to try and keep warm is just to try and move.
He's not sure what to do with his body, you see, but he knows he can't generate enough heat by shivering alone, so he's not sure whether he should exercise harder and try and produce more heat from that. His temperature's just falling, there's nothing he can do about it.
After a very short time, my body simply can't generate enough heat and my temperature is on the way down. My core temperature has fallen 2 degrees, which means I'm now hypothermic. My muscles are stiffening and my brain is cooling. If I lose my wits, I'll have no chance. Even shivering stops as the muscles slow down. And now, a little test.
Can you count down from 100, taking a 7 away at each time? 100 minus 7.
100 minus 7, okay. 100 minus 7, 93.
Minus 7.
86. 86. Feel like I got the flu. I got a headache.
As all the vital organs start to cool, the whole body starts to shut down. This is the critical stage.
Then he would actually get he'd become tired and he'd just like to go to sleep. But he has to survive, he'd have to fight through that phase and keep determined to keep alive, keep going. But eventually, it doesn't matter how determined he is, the conditions will overcome him and his temperature will fall down below a level where he can keep consciousness. And eventually he'd die.
If my body temperature drops by 6 degrees, I lose consciousness, and death is inevitable.
He's in pain now.
Oh, God. I don't want to be here.
Time has come actually to pull him out now. He's had enough. Right, come on, Donald, you've had enough, mate. How are you feeling? God, you're bitterly cold, aren't you? You're shivering a lot. Your muscles stiff.
My toes feels going to fall off.
Your muscles have really gone stiff. You can hardly talk.
Oh, God.
Come on, let's get you warmed up. Put him out, come out and check you out.
In the real world, we need our brains to survive. So if I can't last 40 minutes in minus 18, how am I going to survive out here at minus 30? Eric Bruun and Mads Vidal must know. They have the most extreme tour of duty in the world. For 3 months at a time, the Danish Sirius Patrol travel the icy wastelands of northeastern Greenland with only their training and a dog sled for protection. And for the next 24 hours, I'm going to join them to find out how they survive in nature's freezer.
Hi,
Hi, I'm Donald. Great to
Eric.
meet you. Eric, hi.
my partner Mads.
Mass, hi.
Welcome to Greenland.
So these are your dogs. They're wonderful. Oh, beautiful. How gorgeous. They don't bite.
No, we're very friends.
It's time to go.
Wunderbar!
Hunt! Didn't work that time, did it?
Yeah!
That's all right, all right.
Oh, dog!
Anyway, so that's how you start. That's how you learn. Good idea to learn to ski first before you become a member of the Sirius Patrol. Let's go.
Yeah!
It was the weather that first brought them here. In the Second World War, the Danish had to defend Greenland from the Germans. Because if you know the weather here, you can predict the weather in Europe. Today, the biggest threat to their patch is from the seals. And of course, amateurs like me. But still, highly trained professionals like Eric, Mads, and me are vigilant. Out here, blizzards and snowstorms can strike without warning, and the cold is a constant threat. Temperatures regularly fall below minus 40.
Oh!
thing about being out in the cold is that absolutely everything freezes, including, in this case, my left eyelid. And what the guys have told me is that if your eyelid freezes like that, close, put your hand to warm it up, and then it melts, and then you can open your eye. A bit dangerous to try and pull it open, so I'm just going to try it. Now I can feel it melting. That's a good thing. Now, I can truly say that I feel as cold as I probably look. Now that's fine. It just shows you just got to be careful. The cold's a killer. What do you know?
As night falls, the temperature plummets. There's only one tent, so what happens to me? I'm about to be buried alive. Digging a hole deep into the snow can offer life-saving shelter, or so I'm told.
So, what do we have to do?
Now we start making an engine.
Yeah.
And we dig in and we make as long as you are in that direction.
Okay,
So
kind of ledge, okay.
you will lay about here. So now we dig in and start.
Okay.
And it's just much harder when
Yeah.
you take it. Just throw it away.
So that's my home.
Yes, you're at home.
Excellent.
Try going.
I can look forward to the night alone as the temperature drops below -30. I have to say, I'm a bit apprehensive about being buried alive out here. All I'll have to help me survive is a sleeping bag and some candles.
It's about 1.5 meters high, about 2.5 meters long, and about 1.5 meters wide. My entrance is in there. There's always a gap for oxygen to come through. An emergency link with the Sirius Patrol if anything goes wrong, if this starts to cave in, but it shouldn't do because it's pretty well built. Hi guys, it's Donal here. Just to say no worries and see you in the morning. Over. Okay. See if they respond. If not, well, I just hope they'd be listening if something did go wrong. Okay. It's middle of the night here, and it's about -30 outside. Of course, there's one big problem here in the Arctic, and that is any bit of exposed skin is liable to get frostbite after a few minutes, which brings me to the problem of going to the toilet. Don't think so.
Amazingly, the temperature inside the hole stayed 25 degrees warmer than outside. The snow works as a surprisingly good insulator. So I spent the night in what, for the Arctic, was a cozy -5 degrees.
Morning, Donal.
Morning, guys.
How you been?
Good. Good.
You want to go have a cup of coffee?
That's a great idea.
The Sirius Patrol are trained to cope with the severe Arctic weather. But when it hits the places we least expect it, the consequences can be horrific. This isn't Greenland. This is New York State in early spring 1993.
4 feet from us, our tracks were gone. You couldn't even find where we just came from. They're just gone.
The wind blew us down and our eyelids froze to our face. I mean, you couldn't see. You had to hold your hands up here so it wouldn't sting you.
The 12th of March 1993 saw the entire east coast of the US gripped by one of the wildest winter storms in history.
Here's the latest satellite showing a huge storm system coming up the coast. Tremendous amount of moisture colliding with the cold air means very heavy snows for our region. I'm still going 12 to 24 inches for the capital region by midday tomorrow.
In upstate New York, Jeff Smock and Bill Simmons were relaxing after work. Several hundred miles away, the storm was growing and heading their way. Outside, it started to snow, but that wasn't unusual for the time of year. As they set off home, they had no idea that they were about to be overtaken by a blizzard that would change their lives forever.
Full-blown blizzard conditions are over the Capital District and western New England. We're talking about thunder snows, high winds, and dangerous cold.
The snowfall was extraordinary. Bill and Jeff ground to a halt just half a mile from home. They decided to walk the last leg, and that's when their nightmare began.
You couldn't go forwards, you couldn't go backwards, you couldn't go right or left. There was no place you could go.
It was like plowing through 5 foot of snow, and then you get to a certain point and you're exhausted, and we'd look up and the snowbanks are up here. It's like you're in a hole. Our original thought was we'd stay at the tree for, a few minutes, an hour, whatever it took for the wind to calm down, and then start heading back home. But lo and behold, the weather just kept getting worse, worse, and worse.
By now, the winds were gusting at 145 miles per hour. Temperatures had plummeted way below zero, and the snow was drifting as high as 10 meters. All over the state, the blizzard was tightening its grip.
The death toll from the blizzard of '93 is mounting now. 7 people reported dead.
Make no mistake about it, this is an emergency.
Back at the tree, the storm was getting worse. Jeff and Bill had been stuck here for 8 hours.
Well, I couldn't even walk. I made it maybe about 10 feet from the tree, and my feet just gave out. I couldn't even stand up anymore. I tried to stand up, couldn't. I had to crawl back here.
That's when I said, Bill, I says, no one's looking for us.
Nobody knows we're here.
Right.
They were trapped. As the night wore on, the temperature fell even lower, hitting Arctic extremes of minus 40 degrees, and still the storm raged around them. By the time morning came, Bill and Jeff had spent 18 hours exposed to Arctic conditions. Amazingly, they were still alive. Jeff managed to struggle through the snow and raise the alarm. It was another 6 hours before the rescue services could get to Bill. But the cold had left a devastating legacy. During their hours of exposure, they both suffered winter's vicious touch.
I ended up tucking my head in my shirt, and it pulled up the back of my clothes and exposed the back and the top part of my buttocks, and got severe frostbite. There's no feeling, and the nerves are gone, and there's scar tissue, and they did skin grafts off the back of my leg twice, 2 surgeries.
My feet, my hands, my butt, my knees had gotten it in spots. The calves of my legs had it in spots because the way I was sitting on the ground. My hands were blistered right up, and they were as huge as softballs.
Deep frostbite is a one-way process. The cold literally freezes the skin tissue. Ice forms in the fluid in and around the cells. The tiny blood vessels freeze solid and no oxygen is delivered. But worse is to come. With no blood supply, the cells can't fight infection. Gangrene sets in and the affected area becomes black and starts to decompose. At this stage, there's no option left but to amputate. After his ordeal in the freezing cold, both Jeff's feet were severely frostbitten.
In the end, I ended up getting skin grafts done on my hands, on my butt, my legs, but I lost both of my feet from about 4 inches above the ankles, both of them.
A wild weather event like this is rare, unexpected, which is why the cost is so high. The key to survival is to be prepared. But even the professionals can get caught out. In the last 50 years, the Sirius Patrol have lost 6 men under the ice. Severe frostbite is always a problem, but they know the risks, and their love of this awesome landscape far outweighs the dangers. Today, as the Sirius Patrol travel north into this wonderful wilderness, I'm on a different journey, traveling south with the cold as it brings winter to the peoples of the Northern Hemisphere. I'm going to a place that gets the first blast of winter's icy grip. All that polar wind screaming south is about to crash into the warmer air from the equator. When they meet, all hell breaks loose. And the place right on the front line is the Mount Washington Weather Station in Northeast America. It's here that the battle between hot and cold begins. But for now at least, all is quiet.
Mount Washington is the highest point in the northeastern United States. Although not all that high on a world scale, it's commonly known as the home of the world's worst weather.
On the summit this morning, the temperature outside dipped down to -9 degrees. Winds are currently out of the northwest at 48 miles per hour. The forecast for the summit
today will be in the clouds this morning with snow showers.
And winds will be out of the west, 40 to 60 miles per hour. But don't hold your breath because yet another system will be approaching from the Great Lakes this afternoon.
So how does a sun-kissed mountain like this get such a bad reputation? Well, the summit lies in the path of the principal storm tracks and air mass routes that affect the weather in the northeast, which makes it the perfect place to discover what happens when wind and cold combine.
Well, good morning. Welcome to summer Mount Washington, the home of the world's worst weather.
Great to be here, Charlie. I have to say the mountain's been very good to us today.
I'll tell you should have been here yesterday.
Just my luck. I came here to find the worst winds in the world, and the weather was perfect. But I didn't have to wait long. A few hours later, I saw why this place gets its reputation. Within minutes, the blue skies turned to grey and the winds kicked up. The highest wind ever recorded was here at Mount Washington, a staggering 231 miles an hour. The wind now is gusting at 60 miles an hour, and already I'm getting tossed about. It's very difficult to stay up. The first thing you notice when the wind gets going is that it feels much colder. This effect is called the wind chill factor. So in winds of 50 miles per hour, -5 feels like -38. Wind and cold together multiply the deadly effects of winter, which is why the Mount Washington Observatory is the best place to study the extremes of winter weather. That is, if the instruments don't ice up. When the wind and a cold fog like this meet an object, something truly amazing happens. The fog that surrounds me is made up of billions of water droplets. The strange thing is that they're all way below the freezing point, but remain in liquid form called supercooled. But when they hit an object, they freeze solid. These beautiful feathers of ice are called rime ice. It's as tough as nails. This remarkable ability of water to remain a liquid way below zero is the cause of one of the most extraordinary weather events on the planet, an ice storm. And one of the worst ice storms in history hit eastern Canada with a vengeance.
This was clearly the most destructive, disruptive storm in Canadian history. We have over a century and a half of weather keeping in Canada, and there was nothing to match this.
Ice storms are not unusual in Canada, coating the landscape with a beautiful shroud of ice. But in January 1998, Canada was hit by a storm that was anything but usual. At first, the ice storm of '98 was just as magical.
It was really more of an exhilaration. People were not too disrupted by that. School was canceled. You had businesses closed, but it was a winter wonderland. It gives you that enchanted wonderland. It looks the landscape looks so beautiful.
On the evening of the 4th of January, winter was still on the attack. a bank of freezing polar air sat like a blanket over the northeast of the country. At the same time, a mass of warm, moist air from Texas moved in above the polar air, forming a wedge and trapping it beneath. Perfect conditions for an ice storm. But in the middle of the wedge, rain from the warm air above doesn't have enough time to freeze solid on its way down, so it falls as supercooled rain.